Hi again guys, and welcome to one of the most requested reviews on the channel since the release of Gran Turismo Sport, for fairly obvious reasons. Of course people would like to hear this car reviewed because it's a very significant car. Aston Martin has pretty much always been a part of the Gran Turismo franchise. I believe they've been featured in pretty much every game, maybe not every game, including the HDs and the prologues, but at least most of them, if not all. And this is, of course, the most significant newest addition to their lineup. Because although we do have a newer, real-world version of the Vantage on the game, along with, of course, a couple of fictional race cars, this one is a step above. For obvious reasons. It's the Aston Martin equivalent of cars like the Ferrari 599XX, or the FXX, or the Pagani Zonda, the R in particular. It's that level of track-focused, pure, hardcore hypercar, or supercar, or just exotic, or whatever you want to refer to it as. It is that car. And given how fast Aston Martins are already, if you put an 820 horsepower version on the track with a 6.9 litre V12 engine that weighs 1360 kilos, which is the spec sheet of this car straight out of the crate, well, of course, you're going to expect a lot from the car. It's got a lot to live up to, not just as an Aston Martin specifically, but even more so because of its rivals, not so much in the game, but in the real world. The 599, the FXX, the Zonda R, they are not pushovers, let's say. They are serious track cars. They hold multiple records around multiple circuits, and some circuits more notably than others, such as the Nordschleife itself. And so the question arises, is this 3.3 million credit hypercar actually worth buying, or is it one of those vehicles which you should just wait to win? Because for some people you might win it on day one, for some people you might not win it at all. I have not won a single Vulcan or Veneno so far playing the game, despite having played it every day since its release, and getting the mileage bonus every day. So you can't wait forever for the game to do that for you. If you want the car, should you buy it? Well, as I've said before with some other cars, yes and no, but very much so in the case of this car, because of course always personal preference will have a bearing. Even if you're just looking to buy a car to win races with, personal preference still matters very much because of different driving styles of different players, of course. However, the Vulcan in particular is a car which definitely isn't an essential purchase. You can do just fine without it, but at the same time it is for sure a very useful tool, because although this is basically nestled between Group 3 and Group 1 car, technically I personally feel that this should be a Group 2 car in effect, but of course they haven't done that yet, so it makes sense that it isn't. But it's a car which is definitely more than a road car, but isn't quite a full-on race car. Again, just like the Zonda R and various others. However, it is classified as a road car in the game, in the N classes. And that's totally inaccurate. It should not be in that class, but that's what they've chosen to do. So with that in mind, how good is it? Because the potential could easily swing either way, given that the car should be the best N car in the game, by far, given how fast it is. The Veyron doesn't have the cornering ability, the Veneno's too heavy, the LaFerrari is just too twitchy in comparison and too slippery, so this should quite easily dominate the N classes, especially once you get above, say, N700. So does it? Well, to be honest, one of the reasons why I wasn't looking forward to doing this review is because I believe the answer would be no. I'm not a fan of the Vulcan, and that doesn't affect my review in a negative way as far as personal preference, but it does mean that going into the review, I don't have negative thoughts about it. I just realistically know that this car isn't as good on most games as people want it to be. It's just not. It's a simple fact. On the Forza games that it's featured on, various others, it's just not as good as people want it to be. Now, the car is very slippery on every racing game that features it. The fact that it's a front-engine, rear-wheel drive, exotic track toy immediately presents it with totally different handling to something like a Zonda R, which of course has a mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout, and so does the FXX. But at the same time, I would say that the handling on this car, again on pretty much every game, but in particular with GT Sport of course, is kind of like, if you haven't driven it, a cross between the overall style of a Viper ACR, but with a much more slippery, twitchy style. Something more akin to, say, an older prototype race car, but not a good one. Something which is challenging. Now, one doesn't immediately come to mind, but I'm sure you can think of ones that fall under that kind of category. Something which is twitchy, but not necessarily in a good way. This is that car. You cannot use full throttle, especially in upgraded form, when exiting a corner. That's a simple fact. The car will not put the power down regardless of the tyres that you've got on it. And that leads me directly into one of the slight issues which I have with the car, and it's not an issue as much as a disappointment really, and that is for the tuning. The upgrades are really good. You can get it up to around 1,000 horsepower, you can drop the weight, that's all good. You can also lower it right down to, I believe it's N600 or N700, I think it might be N700. But more specifically, you cannot adjust the downforce, and stranger than that, you cannot adjust the diff, which is a really weird choice for polyphony to have, but it means that you are basically stuck, for the most part, with what the car is. You cannot make it personalised in that way. And although it is fast, for sure, it is basically the most dominant N car in terms of pure track potential, but at the same time, it means that you've just got to deal with it or not use it. Those are your only options. You either deal with the car and take its bad points on the nose and deal with them, whereas with other cars like Veyrons and GTRs and even the LaFerrari, you can personalise it. You can change those settings to overcome obstacles, to make it, or to bring it under more control and to make it more placid and make it more pliable for the driver and for different driving styles. You cannot do that with the Vulcan. You have to just take it or leave it. Now, that being said, this is a fast car, a seriously fast car, and in fact on my first full lap attempt here at the 24-hour version of the Nürburgring, it was faster than my Audi R8 LMS, which of course is a full-on official race car, and that was upgraded too. So it shows the kind of potential which this one has. So is 3.3 million too much? Oh yeah, definitely, it's way too much. No car deserves to be that much in the world of GT sport once you've set the precedent that for 1 million credits you can get the best cars in the game. So no, it's definitely not worth that from a performance point of view, but at the same time, just like the 2 million credit Cobra, I understand why it is. It does have that kind of collector's significance, and it kind of demands that sort of price. It's that kind of car. So it doesn't annoy me. It's certainly no Veneno, which definitely shouldn't be that price. But I would say that this is a car which, if you want a challenge, but more so if you want a really competitive N-class car which demands respect and a lot of practice, then yeah, get the Vulcan. But it might take you a while to save for it. But overall, that's it for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.